Yeah, we do. Thank you, Karen. So this is a meeting of the Board of Water Commissioners Tuesday afternoon. And the purpose of this meeting is to continue our discussion on the rates, revisions to the rates and fees associated with the water system. So, and we have a couple of guests with us today. That includes Rich Waldo, our town administrator, and Doug Gardner, who's the consultant who has been working with us on the rate analysis and recommendations. So the purpose of today's meeting was primarily to prepare ourselves for a public meeting public hearing that's required if we're going to make any changes to the rate structures here. So, in preparation for this meeting, Karen and I and Becky Select did have a meeting earlier today with Doug, just to kind of familiarize him with the schedule that we had prepared, and because Doug did have some questions on it. So I would like to kind of open it with kind of continuing that discussion so that others can hear part of that as well. So Doug, if I can kind of turn it over to you to kind of get your observations on that fee schedule that we were looking at.
Okay. As Jim mentioned, we had about an hour-long meeting this morning so that I could better understand the rate schedule that was sent to me, because it's a little bit different than the one I prepared for you. So I'll just start at the top, and everybody has a copy of this. It's the it's hard to see, sorry. It's the looks like an Excel sheet dated 5/24. Just so we're all on the same page. The connection, the semi-annual service charge, the recommended charge is $125. That's great. That is, I'll just go over it. I can't hear you, Jim. You're muted. Oh, you're in the back. You're talking in the background. Okay, yes. Sorry. So $125 is the semi-annual service charge. And I guess what's changed from the last time I formally met with the board was that the customers that have paid their connection fee, who are currently paying a service charge, that charge is going to be waived, which I think is an excellent idea. My belief is that if they are not taking water, they should not be paying a minimum charge. They have no ability to draw water, so therefore they should not be paying anything. They've paid their fee to tie into the system. At some point, when they are tied in and they have a meter, then they will be charged the fee. The first step rate is for all consumption up to 20,000 gallons every 6 months. That's at $1.40 per 1,000 gallons. That's a great number. And you're also you're going with the 3-step rate that I recommended. So that we're combining the current 2nd and 3rd step into one, and then anything over that amount would be the 3rd step. My concern is that we discussed at a couple meetings the unit method of charging customers. That is, if there are multiple dwellings or multiple apartments. Sorry. It's down at my desk right now. I won't hear it. If there are multiple dwellings at at a property, they would be assessed, if there are two dwellings, they would be assessed 2 semi-annual service charges. And then the amount of consumption they would be allowed would be doubled. So instead of 20,000 gallons in the first step, they would be allowed 40,000 gallons before they crossed into the second tier or the second step. Same would work for the second step, you would double that. And for the third step, you would double that amount as well. Well, that's a valid way of charging customers. We didn't do any analysis as to how much revenue the unit method would generate. We discussed it in principle, but we never took it beyond the initial discussions. And my concern is, if you implemented the unit method as is with the customer base that you have now, you would come up very short in terms of revenue at the end of the fiscal year. That is, the revenue would not meet the projections because it's a different method of how to charge your customers.
Doug, on what information do you base that?
30 years experience. Because you're going to go to the unit method and you have customers that have, let's say they have 5 units. They're now going to have 5 units that is likely the consumption is going to fall in the first step. It will not climb into the second and third step.
Right, but the doubling the customer charge in almost all cases is significantly more revenue than you'd get from the water usage.
Right.
At 250 a year or 125 semi-annually. We actually looked at this with somebody who's considering connecting, HVCC, the Harborside Village. They've got 80 units. They'd be paying way more under this proposed unit method than they would if they were connected and going into the higher tier rates.
I don't know. I didn't do any of that analysis. I don't know. Just based on your current customer base, not including anybody who may hook in, like Harbor Village.
Right. We have so few. We have so few multiple unit locations. I mean, it's our big generators are restaurants and commercial customers. They're single meter customer. They're already in those higher tier rates. They wouldn't get any benefit. We have almost no condos that are hooked up to the water system. It's almost all single family homes. And we've had, we have the opportunity to sign up a customer right now that's been asking for a set of rates, and this is what was proposed. It's more expensive than all other alternatives that we looked at for them in particular. We've been at, it was always our intention to roll out a set of rates that would encompass 95 Lawrence Road, the future housing project. And we've got now a condominium complex of 5 units on Kendrick Avenue they're looking to connect. We got a lot of people that would like to connect. And frankly, this is the most expensive way for them to obtain water service. But when we had deliberations among the other water commissioners, the commissioners felt, and I won't speak for any of the other commissioners because they can obviously chime in, but that structure is the same. They would be paying, these multiple unit customers would be paying exactly the same amount of money as if they had connected as a single family home, because they're going to pay their tier of water usage, and they're going to pay their customer service charge. So there's no other, any other proposal would be less expensive for them.
Possibly, but you can't set your rates based on who might connect in the future.
No, so we just did it. We did it based on. I mean, the idea is to just do it on an equitable basis, where a single family customer is paying the same as 3 condo units, and each condo unit owner is paying the same as if they were, a single family home connected, which frankly is a bad deal for them because it's 1 meter, but 3 customers. So our administrative costs are less for them. Our overheads are less. And in many cases, those condo associations have, condo fees. So we don't have to go collect from 3 people. We're collecting from one entity, and they're paying the same as if they were a single family home. They get no benefit. So that was what the commissioners were comfortable with. I don't know. I mean, like I said, any other proposal that we looked at would have been less revenue for the system.
Okay, all I'm stating is that I'm not going to sign off on this in my report because I did not run the analysis. And I can't put my name to something, to numbers that I haven't crunched to make sure they're going to generate the proper amount of revenue. And I know part of when some of our initial discussions, and this was several months ago, that you wanted to implement the unit rate because you felt it would be more equitable to Harbor Village and to the 40B project that's coming on board. But now you're saying it's going to cost them more money than if we just went with the meter method, the single meter method?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, the single meter method, they'd pay a meter charge, and then they'd go into the higher tier usage fees. And the analysis that we did, it'd be less expensive. They did one, it would be less expensive if we did it that way for them. But the board, the commissioners were not comfortable. Yeah, the commissioners felt that, each customer should be treated the same, and a single, regardless of the fact that they have a single meter, and it's one bill, they felt that it was more equitable that each unit paid the same as if they were a single family home. And, it's going to generate more revenue. And when we looked at the bills, it's also not unreasonable. They're paying, each of these units is still going to pay about, on average, like $310 to $360 for a typical type of customer a year. If we did something else, they would be paying less.
I'm not arguing whether they should pay more or they should pay less. I'm not arguing at all. I'm just stating that I'd be uncomfortable going with the unit method because first of all, you don't know how many units are out there. You don't know how many customers this is going to affect. Somebody who has a cottage on their property would have to now be included in the unit method. So that will have to be identified. The utility billing system will have to be updated, and the rate structure will have to be implemented accordingly, which is all conducted by Penachuk at this point.
I think that we went through those discussions, and that was taken into consideration, and we still ended up with a better system and less places for error. So I could live with you not signing off on that one term.
If I could speak to it, if I may, and it's nice to meet you guys that I haven't met. I think I've met most of you, maybe with the exception of Tom and Doug. I'm trying to get caught up into where you guys are with this rate structure and the proposals here. I think one of the biggest things that I have concerns with is the fact that we have a budget that has been set. We have an override that has been approved. And basically that's a fixed entity. It's a fixed number for us really to work with. And not to have the full understanding of both rate structures and not having an analysis to both of them concerns me a little bit, with the fact that we're just going to hang our hat on what we believe is to be correct, because yeah, you make a good point. You're going to have 4 different meter charges now instead of 1 meter charge or 1 basic service fee. It makes sense, but there's a level of comfort that would make me feel better going into this next fiscal year, knowing that we're making the right decision, that at the end of the year, the general fund is not going to be cash strapped because of a decision we made 12 months earlier.
It's exactly the opposite though, Rich. Because because a lot of customers are looking to sign up. And just to do the math, we did do an analysis. We don't know, I don't know, we don't know, and I don't think anybody knows, Doug nor anybody in town, how many customers have multiple units that are connected to the water system. I don't think anybody has that information. It'd take quite some time to find it out and to figure it out. That's why the commissioners felt it made a lot of sense to just charge those people the same thing that they would be charged if they were connecting as a single family homeowner. The $250 a year customer charge turns into over 200,000 gallons of water. So in other words, if you have to consume 200,000 gallons of water before you're at the initial 00140 rate, to cover that customer charge. So it's collecting in dollars and cents terms, it's collecting the amount of revenue that you'd be collecting from probably 100,000 gallons of water usage. Most of our customers are consuming, 20 to 30,000. There is no downside to this rate structure as proposed. And the thing that I'm concerned about if we don't implement quickly is we won't get those customers. Every customer that connects is lifetime revenue. If we want to change the rates next year, we can do that. But in terms of the budget in a submitted budget to town meeting that was approved by town meeting and a cross subsidy from general fund in the amount that we're expecting, what this structure as proposed, if we pick up more customers, will do is reduce that subsidy. There's no downside to this.
Well, the downside is you don't know how many customers are going to fall in this unit method, and you need to know because you cannot charge somebody who has 2 units based on a single meter and then charge somebody who has 2 or that you don't know about and charge somebody who has 2 units that you do know about in a different manner, which is essentially what you're going to be doing. That's an inequitable rate structure. And yes, it may generate sufficient revenue, but you can't charge one customer one way and another customer the other way, whether it's intentionally or inadvertently.
Right, but
we do know how many people do have multiple meters because the assessor's office will have part of their annual report that they have to file with the Commonwealth. It lists how many unit or living dwellings, or I forget what the exact terminology they use, but there is a report that will tell you how many 2-family homes, how many 3-family homes, how many apartments, et cetera, et cetera. And then you might have to do a little bit of research to determine, on a business aspect, are there any businesses with, say, 1 meter and 3 or 4 businesses within that building.
But they're not dwellings, so they wouldn't count.
And we have the situation where if the regulations call for each unit to be listed, and therefore they would be out of compliance with, which would address your issues, they'd be out of compliance, but it'd still be an enforcement problem or not, whether or not they're hooked up. So we can say that we're going to buy individual meters. Some guy could have an apartment and not report it. So, we're relying on the fact of an honest transaction here and following the regulations.
Well, you'd have to work with the assessor's office. You'd have to work with the building department. There would have to be some cooperation between departments to identify all this. Then it's going to be some legwork on Karen's part to make sure it gets entered into, or once it's identified, it needs to get entered into the utility billing system that Penachuk uses. And then you're relying upon Penachuk to take care of all that. Now, I'm just and I'm saying that that will be fine and that will work. But if you're, we're going in blind here. That we
No, we're
don't
not. Time out, Doug. We have about 240 customers connected to the water system. Of those, if there's more than 10, I will resign from the Board of Water Commissioners. There's not more than 10 people that we're talking about that could potentially fall into that. We're talking about an infinitesimally small issue that we can sort out between now and November 1st.
And we have the issue that there's already, of those areas, there's plenty of houses around town that the Board of Assessors or anybody else doesn't know that somebody has divided their house or they're selling water to a associated dwelling. We don't even know they're there. They're not registered half the time. So I think we're chasing smoke if we're going after that issue.
We also we don't have, there's only 240 customers connected to the system. This is an infinitesimally small problem. This isn't a system where we have, 60,000 customers and potentially a very large problem. We're talking about literally maybe a couple, if even a half a dozen people that would fall into the category of currently being unidentified as multiple dwellings on one meter.
Right.
So I want to fully wrap my head around this, and one of the things I'm still confused about is what about a condominium that has multiple units in a condominium? Do they fall under the meter charge?
With the new rate structure, they would fall under the unit method. So if they had 1 meter,
Yeah.
okay, and that's assuming 1 meter. If they have multiple meters, so if each condo unit is served with a separate meter, they're paying the regular meter charge and the regular water charge anyway.
Exactly. But when I look at an accounting system on how the management end of things would look, an account number is tied to a meter. And so now what we're trying to do is actually tie 3 accounts or 4 account numbers to one single meter.
No, it'll be paid by the unit, by the association.
So by the association, correct.
It's one meter, it's one account, Rich. And the converse situation would be, let's say a condominium of 10 condos. If they had individual meters, they'd each have individual accounts, right?
Right.
So it'd be separate accounts for each of those meters.
Exactly, because
in this case, under the unit method, they have 1 account, 1 meter. They're identified as a multi-dwelling account, and so they pay the meter charge times the number of dwellings.
The base service fee, you mean?
The base service fee times the number of dwellings, and their block structure is multiplied by the number of dwellings. So their individual water usage is billed at whatever number of dwellings times the block limit. So if it's 20,000, it would be 20,000 times that number of dwellings. So they're basically being billed as if they're each one is being billed as if it was a single family home under this structure.
Yeah.
But it's only 1 meter. It's only 1 account.
Yeah, no. And you're just going to charge 4 basic or however many condominium basic service fees to that 1 account.
Yeah,
yes.
And that's really expensive. I mean, the other alternative that we were considering was not doing that and charging a single base service fee, since it's only 1 meter and 1 bill, and then extending the block because you've got multiple dwellings on it. And the commissioners didn't feel that was fair to other single-family homeowners. But that's more expensive for a condominium.
So the association pays a single charge for that 1 meter, and it's up to them to collect the individual charges to repay themselves. So we stay out of that whole thing. So it's more convenient, less bookkeeping, and less costs to us.
Doug, what would you need from us to feel more comfortable with the analysis or for this unit methodology?
I'd like to know how many units exist right now. And again,
that are currently
that
on the
information-
system?
It's not in the system. We can probably work with the assessor's office to determine who's included. And
Yeah.
it could be a small number, as Kurt has mentioned, but it gives me heartburn if you don't know, if you don't have all the pieces to the puzzle, you can't put it back together.
Right,
Yeah,
but it's not gonna, there's not gonna be a loss of revenue to the system, though. There's no, in other words, given the fact that we don't know if there's, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 people in this category, when we find out, they're gonna end up paying more money.
Right.
And if
I
that's
think
the
that,
case,
it's what's happened in the past, and I think Tom was kind of alluding to this, is that there are properties that have expanded the number of housing units or residential units that, on site, and they have and even though they may have gone through an inspection with the building inspector, there has not been communication with the water system as to so that we know that in fact it's no longer just 2 units, it's now 4 units on that location, and they're existing on a single meter, and with only one base service fee. So clearly we have to find a way to get that, to increase the communication with the building department so that we know whether or not we are dealing with a single family or a multifamily property.
and as Kurt mentioned, it could bring in, the way he describes it, it likely will bring in more revenue than what is projected. But I've been in business for 30 years. I can't sign off on something if I haven't done the analysis myself.
Yeah, I don't think that gives us, gives anybody heartburn. What gives me heartburn is not getting customers that are very anxious to sign up for the water system on the system. And we needed to have that proposal for them to consider getting on. HVCC has a board meeting coming up. It's this month. And they were looking for a proposal to put in front of their board. And if they don't connect, we lose them. We lose them. There's, I don't know what's going to happen with Daniels, but, I used to do rate design at Boston Edison years ago. I'm very familiar with rate design. I'm very familiar with, hitting a revenue target for a rate class. What I do know is that I just did some quick math, but we need about 250 new customers to have the system break even. And that's with the proposed $750 connection fee, and not including the connection fee. That's just on basic water service charges. So we are very, very close to getting the system to break even, but we're not going to get there if we don't have rates that are attractive to people to connect to the system. And saying nothing, and I mean, if we were to, for example, just, we only have a 1 meter rate right now, we will lose several customers right away.
And we have the issue with new housing behind the school. We have to get a rate system in place before the 46 places, I think, of units up there that are going to be hooking up. We have to have something in place. We don't have a choice on that.
And we also need, a connection fee structure in place, because people are going to be down here during the summer looking to potentially connect. We've also expanded the water main out to Coles Neck. There are a lot of restaurants, a lot of other customers along there, and they will not connect at, 6,000 or 6,500 or some number like that. And we've got to have something that we can go out and market to those customers to get them connected to the system.
Seems like we're talking two different fees here, two rates.
We are two, yes, we are two different issues, but not unrelated.
I'm not sure how water rates is going to entice someone to connect or not.
No, I don't think they will, because I don't think they realize they wouldn't know how much they'd be consuming.
Exactly.
It's a big problem as far as money. I mean, we're talking about $7,000 to hook up versus $750.
Right, that's the
No,
connection fee, but
That's just
really
connection fee, Tom.
what we're talking about now is basically just the rate structure itself. In the water system.
Yeah, I mean, my view is that from a due diligence perspective, the proposed rate structure has no downside. In other words, there's no risk to reducing revenue to the system. If anything, it's going to bring on new customers, and it will. And I've already run several examples, but Jim had cited, for example, somebody that's a 2-dwelling customer. They'd be currently paying, if they're consuming 20,000 gallons each per half year, they would be paying 250 times the, let's just say 40,000 gallons per year. So basically they'd be paying, I think it's around another $28 or $30 on top of the base service fee. Under our proposal, they're going to be paying 250 times 2. That's $500, which is significantly more than the 250 times plus the $30 or $40 in usage fees. It's substantially more expensive.
Right. So every new customer we don't get, we get the 750 plus the meter fees is going to be far more than an extra few gallons. And that's where they make their decisions on. That upfront cost is what hits people and scares the hell out of them. So I think Kurt is right that we need the hookups. That's where we make the money, not on the gallon fees.
Well, and also on the customer service fees, because at $250 a pop, 250 times 2 is 500, times 4 is 1,000. And in order to get $1,000 from the water charges, Doug, even if you took the highest rate, what is it, 0.01?
1440 1,000
No, the highest block rate
is for all consumption in excess of 60,000 is 14.01440.
Okay, and if you take that times, let's say, 4 customers at 40,000 gallons is 160,000 gallons. That 160,000 gallons, is it 160,000? 40, 20, no, it's 20 times 4, it's 80,000 gallons. Am I doing my math right? So 80,000 gallons billed out at the highest rate I'm missing a zero.
Well,
It's $115.
Yeah, so it's not significant compared to the rest of the fees that we get per individual entry.
And I don't disagree with that. I think that that's true. I try to look at it in different perspectives. And honestly, I think you guys have a good analysis. I just, worry about, not having that full due diligence. When I look at the proposed structure here, some of the things that I'd like to see is that, especially in our community, to put more of the burden onto the seasonal folks rather than the year-round folks. And I think you guys try to do that with some of your structures. So I think with the meter charge per gallon, I think you tried to target that where you kept everything under 20,000 as a pretty cheap price for water. At a cent and a cent and a half per thousand. I think that's pretty good. Honestly, I think that's cheap.
It's one of the lowest that anywhere on the Cape.
Exactly. So when you talk about that there's no risk with the proposed, I think that, you know, one of the arguments would be missed opportunities. You know, that's a risk. That's a risk of missed opportunities. Are we sure that, you know, that's the right set, you know, rate to be set? It's pretty cheap, you know, and if we went higher on that, would people actually feel that pinch, especially with the savings on the connection fee?
No, they wouldn't really feel it, Rich. I think you're right. But what kind of, you know, and I'm speaking a little bit for Doug here, because that particular part of the structure is his design, but based on conversations that we had among the Board of Water Commissioners, that, you know, somebody who's only consuming like 20,000 gallons, that's typically somebody who's an SSI type or, you know, a low income type consumer. And then if you look at the way the rates go up after 20,000 for between 20 and 60, it's a very, very big increase in the price. And then if you go to the next step, it's almost, you know, it's another 300% increase in the next block. So if you're filling up a pool, if you're a commercial customer, if you're a large user, these rates are very high relative to other places. I think Dennis is a lot of communities are flat. I think Tisbury, Dennis, you know, they're flat at around you know, 0.00. Well, what are we, $3 and around $3 a thousand or something like that. You know, so we're way more expensive than that when you get above into these other blocks. So you're right. I mean, is there a lost opportunity there at the, you know, at the first block? Maybe, but it's also low income block. And I do think that, you know, by bumping it up the way we do in the next two blocks, we're significantly more expensive than a lot of other communities. So both in terms of sending a conservation signal to the community for increased consumption, and for, again, you know, really kind of getting a lot more revenue out of your larger users, commercial users, restaurant users, this structure does that.
And this opportunity sounds a lot like gouging. That's the type of feedback we're going to get. I've been here a while and I've seen it before.
You know, and what Doug did do, which I think is wonderful, at least this set of rates, and we bumped up the first block by 2, you know, whatever it was, 2 mils. You know, he suggested 0.00138, and our current rate is 0.00140, and we just said, well, let's leave it the same. There's no reason to go down on the first block, so we left it the same. But other than that, you know, I think, you know, on balance, I think it does a lot of good things for the town. It provides stability because the customer service fee is so high. So it's not our revenues are not subject to big swings based on the consumption levels. They're really not at all because of that high customer service fee. So anyway, you're right. I mean, you know, the rate design can get debated in a lot of different ways. At the end of the day, what Doug's proposal did is it moves us about $30,000 to $50,000 less in terms of cross subsidy from the general fund. And if we can get, you know, like I said, about 250 more customers, we can get this thing to break even.
All right. In terms of the reducing the fee for not connected, was that part of the original analysis? I mean, currently there is one. Was the recommendation to drop that to 0?
That would be, we're talking about dropping it to 0 until such time that those property owners choose to connect. And once they connect, then they would be paying the base service fee. How that all happened, Rich, was that we believe back in 2010, when the water system was expanded, there was a kind of a threat that if people did not connect then, they might not have the opportunity going forward because the water, you know, the water supply might be limited. So we had close to 50 properties that signed on but never connected to the system. And unfortunately, there was never a plan that was going to continue on and on for 10 years now. And we've gotten complaints from some of those folks who paid their $6,000 connection fee, did not connect to the system, but they're now paying $87 twice a year and not getting any, and they don't have water service, but they're being billed this base service fee, even though they're not getting anything for it. And the neighbor next door now who did not do this, could hook up tomorrow and not have to start fresh there. And they didn't lose anything by not connecting 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I get that. That's probably one of the hardest things to deal with what you're working with right now is that.
And we're getting complaints, and we've gotten threats that they're going to take it to the state,
And we're,
So-
and Rich, to your point, that's going to cost us $5,000 roughly. I think there's about 20 people in that category, roughly.
It costs
more.
10,000 a year.
What's that again?
It's 10,000 a year.
How many are in that class?
43, 46, somewhere in that range.
43 or 46. So it's going to cost us $10,000 to do that. Yep.
And that's a $10,000 differential from what the budget was put in for fiscal year 23. So
That's right.
I don't think that was included in that.
No.
I don't think that was included in the assumptions on the budget.
No, okay.
No, it
I'm
wasn't.
not certain. I'd have to go
But-
back. We have to go back, talk to Lisa.
Other than the fact that they paid $6,000, how do we incentivize them to connect to the system if they're not paying a base fee?
Well, it's interesting. Going back into and reading the minutes from the meetings that occurred back then, it's clear there was a kind of a looming threat. If you don't sign up now, you may not be able to get water in the future. And so a lot of people took that seriously and basically started paying their connection fee. I don't know how we would do it other than if we just say, okay, we're going to stop charging you the base service fee until you connect. Whatever you paid in at this point, that's, you paid in your connection fee, fine. So when it comes time to actually connect, you're not going to get charged another connection fee. Even though you paid $6,000, that connection fee may now be as low as $750.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know, Rich, why anybody, who paid $6,000 or $9,000 for public water would not want to connect. I just don't, it makes no sense to me. But I don't think we can force them to connect unless town wants to go, unless we want to go to town meeting and ask for betterments, or we want to, go to town meeting and ask for a requirement that if, the water line passes in front of your home, you have to connect. We haven't, we got a lot of pushback, a huge amount of pushback when Harry Turkanian about, I think 3 or 4 years ago, went to town meeting and started talking about betterments. The community was very, very, very against betterments. They'd be even more against, I'm sure, a requirement to connect if the line passes in front of your home. So we're kind of stuck. We can go back at the betterments issue, but we're kind of stuck with trying to get people to voluntarily connect. And again, somebody who's paid $6,000 already, why you wouldn't connect? What other incentive we can give them?
Well, I can tell you, the ones that I know of, they're folks who have that the distance from the curb stop to their house is great, and therefore the cost to actually install to put the line in from the curb stop to the house it could very well be $4,000 to $5,000 more, and a new well may not cost any more than that.
Yeah, I think that's another complexity here is the fact that people have the option of putting in a well. There's still the real option rather than if it's a community where, you can't get potable water from a well. I think that's
Right.
one of the things.
It's a limited thing. a lot of people with the new septic system rules and all the attention to pollution, they're running out of space to put a well on their lots. That's one thing. Second thing is, we're going to raise the monthly, the 6 months of service charge. That's going to cause more. They're going to notice that, and then we're going to be more complaints on that, and it's still not going to make them buy it. And because you talk to these people that they haven't hooked up, and the only reason they hooked up was to cover the selling price of the house, probably, or something like that. They think their wells are glorious, and they just think that way. Well water is the best water. It's not. It's probably less good water than ours. But there's taking this incentive offer on is not big enough to make them do it. The people vote Democratic or Republican because that's what they believe. And it's very hard to change their minds, and it's the way it is with the wells.
Well, moving forward, is there anything in the regulations that if someone commits to connect, how many days they have to connect when?
Not, there isn't now, but that's something that I recommend that we put into the regulations. It's whether it's 60 days or 6 months or a year, similar to what they do in terms of septic systems, or sewer systems, that you have to do it within a certain time frame.
Okay.
It's silly to have a liability out there. In other words, they've paid something and we're holding that, we're having to account for that, and then they don't connect.
I think that what we did in terms of the assumption about reducing the connection fee, that would be attractive to folks who are considering, well, maybe I need to put a new well in, but if the connection fee now is only $750, maybe it makes sense now to connect to if I can, to connect to the municipal water system here. And so that was one idea behind that. I think the other point, Rich, that is really key on this is that given the nature of the towns out here, Wellfleet in particular, but this is not, it's no different than I think with, say, Provincetown as well. You've got a seasonal population here. I'm talking about homeowners now, that they're here, maybe 6 months out of the year. The rest of the year, the house is closed up, or they're not using it. So, but in our case, they would still be paying the base service fee for the entire year, and that's the biggest part of the water bill, essentially $250 for that versus, and the water charges themselves is probably $60 to $70 for the year, after the base service fee is paid. So it made sense to try to capture more of those people and attract more with a lower connection fee. However, and I have concerns, and I've shared this with Doug as well on this, that I think the $750 connection fee is too low, in the sense that it doesn't provide us any kind of reserves here for future expansion of infrastructure on the water system, or so we're really hamstringing ourselves here if we think that we're going to be able to manage this with only $750 on the connection fee. Although Doug had an idea this morning that I think is really something we should be thinking about in terms of that $750, what that would actually be, versus that would be some additional costs associated with actually making a connection, like the meter charge, the cost of the meter, and any other incidental expenses, inspections, things like that have to occur in conjunction with the work to do the actual connection. You want to comment, Doug?
Yeah, in the schedule as we discussed it and prepared it, what's covered, I can share my screen if you want, but the connection fee includes administrative setup, meter, and transponder. User privately contracts and is responsible for cost of connection to main, physical piping to building, and meter connection to plumbing. So that's the way we described it in the, in the rates that we discussed the last couple of meetings.
So who's going to pay for the inspectional work that comes with installing the meter?
When you say inspection work, are you talking about whitewater inspecting, or are you talking
Yes.
about the plumbing official
Yes.
inspecting?
It's Whitewater that does that.
Yeah, so it'd be Whitewater. I'm sure Whitewater charges you money for to go out and inspect the meter once it's installed.
Yep. And
They probably go out twice, before and after.
yeah, and it doesn't, I mean, the meter itself is I think the meter and the transponder were $250.
Okay.
And so the idea behind the 750 was it would easily cover their inspection costs. They're going out and whatnot. The meter, the transponder, and what it costs to set them up in the billing system.
So you're really not charging them a connection fee. You're just trying to get your money back for installing the meter. So really, the install or the system development charge is zero, and you're just hoping to get your money back.
Well, it's not exactly. I mean,
with all the other incidentals.
Yeah, I mean, the incidentals of, I mean, we can get a number from Whitewater. I think they gave us one before, but we felt that we were going to be collecting much more than our costs with the 750.
But that's not the purpose of the system development charge. The purpose of the system development charge is to buy into the system that the town and the current ratepayers have invested in over the years. And that fee should include nothing. It's the ability to tap into the system at some point in the future. And all the costs that are involved to tap into that system in the future is a separate charge to the customer.
So looking at those fees across the Cape, we did do an analysis of a large number of communities, and we're in the middle of kind of the what other communities are charging for a connection fee. We're right about in the middle. That's 750.
Could be, but that's not how you should. It's not how you should be setting your fees.
No, but it's a sanity check in terms of what other communities are doing, at least to get some input and get some real world experience from other folks, a lot of other people looking at the same problem. In Wellfleet, again, we only have 240 customers connected. Our challenge is getting people connected. And what we have talked a lot about over the last maybe 4 years is reducing the barrier to entry to the system, and trying to significantly encourage new customer additions. And like I said earlier, with about 250 more customers, we're at break even. So we have an economic problem vis-a-vis the fact that it's a voluntary system, the fact that putting in a new well costs you about $2,500. And so there are limits to what we felt in our discussions we could reasonably put out as a price signal to the market and still expect people to connect to the system. So those are the challenges we face, and the fact that it's all voluntary. So I don't know,
To that
if you
point,
can come up
Kurt,
with some better ideas, throw them out
to
there.
that point, to the point, Kurt, about it being a voluntary system, I want to ask Doug or Rich on this. Are you aware of other towns where the connection to the water system is voluntary?
Anybody?
Well, in the Provincetown water system, which also serves Truro, not everybody is connected in Truro. They have a better ability to get a well, as opposed to Provincetown, where you can't get potable water from a well, or very rarely can you get potable water from a well. So when you're looking at the Provincetown water system that serves Truro, there are people in Truro that voluntarily choose to connect to the Provincetown system or not. And there's an approval process for them to connect to the system. They actually not only do that to get the Water and Sewer Board Commission to approve it, but they also have to get the select board on both sides to approve the connection.
But are any possible customers required to hook up?
My
Only under-
experience, oh, sorry, Rich.
I was going to say, in that particular case, only if there was an enforcement order from a local board of health for some reason or not.
So there, it is a voluntary system primarily.
Not really, because it's, they don't have potable water, so you can't put in a well. You can't supply your well. You can't supply water in Provincetown from a well.
Exactly. When you get into Truro, it's more of a voluntary system, but it's very restricted. Where our water supply, where the water supply there serves them, is really limited to areas where you can't get good water, or it's prohibited because of septic reasons and stuff like that.
We're not addressing the question I had. They are not required by statute to hook up unless it's a health issue, right?
Yes.
No law says you have to hook up when the pipe goes by your house.
You don't have to in Truro, no.
No, in Provincetown. Now, never mind the condition of your well hole. Are you required by statute to hook up to the water?
That's maybe not quite the right question, Tom, because in Provincetown, you would not be able to use the water if you connected to anything else, to a well. It's not, the statute doesn't say that, but the health regulations won't let you drink it.
That's the question I'm asking. You may have to in reality, in the real world, but in the legal sense, you don't have to hook up.
In the legal sense, you have to, because you can't drink the water. You wouldn't be able to have it the home. You would not
going to
get
a certificate of occupancy.
Right.
You're not going to get a certificate of occupancy.
Right.
So
you got no choice, Tom, whether the legislature tells you got to do it or the Board of Health tells you got to do it.
What about, though, Doug, in other towns, like that were in the analysis that Kurt did, like say Chatham, Orleans, Dennis, Brewster, are they?
I don't know what their regulations are, but some of the communities outside the Cape, some communities require you to hook in when they run a line by your house. Others do not require. So it's a town by town.
Yeah, it is town by town. Chatham is a mandatory connection town. I just don't know enough about. I didn't do enough research on the other communities.
If you look at what they're doing with sewer down in those communities, when they run the sewer line by your house, you're going to be forced to connect in.
Correct.
Unless your septic system is under 5 years old, and then they give you a grace period to tie in. But it's a community by community decision. Your decision in Wellfleet was to not have mandatory connections, so that's what you have to live with.
And I don't think, by the way, I don't think the town's been uncomfortable with that, and the flip side of it is that when in terms of, Jim, your question about how do we fund the system going forward, every time we've gone to town meeting asking for a borrowing authorization, they've approved it. And if the system needed to be expanded, or there were another, major capital investment that was required, we'd go to town meeting with a warrant article and say, we don't collect this money. We don't have anything sitting in in a fund from, previously connected or previously collected connection fees. So we're in the same boat we've always been in, which is we got to go back to town meeting.
And if you pass these lower connection fees, you're going to be in the same boat moving forward as well.
Yes, we will.
This is
My-
not the only way you're going to get out is by adding more and more people to the system. And
making sure you have reserves.
making sure you
Yeah.
have reserves and ensuring that whatever the connection fee is, that you recover all your costs and then some. Because
Yeah.
you need to, when you have these connection fees, if you call them connection fees, they have to be used. The revenue has to be segregated and can only be used for future capital. You can't use it for anything else.
And
So-
I thought we agreed that it could be used to pay off debt that's
You
already.
could pay, yeah, you could pay off debt, but with a system the way you are, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
Legally, you could pay off debt.
The biggest challenge I think that we've kicked around now for several years is we've had we keep expanding the system and we really don't get any new customers. So we're doing it's close to a $3 million expansion to tie in Coles Neck. That's almost as much money as we've paid to build the entire system in the first place. And we still only have 240 customers. We've watched this system languish for like 10 years with, a abysmal connection percentage. And I think that's the thing that town meeting's most concerned about is we have all this asset out there and people aren't using it. And so the big challenge for us was,
then you
I'm
need
sorry.
to maybe you need to change your policy and enforce if the pipe runs by your house, you have a certain amount of time to connect.
Yeah, but that's going to require, it has to go through, town meeting and.
Or
Yeah.
if that's the case, then hit them with a betterment, because you are bettering their property when you run a piece of pipe by their house. And if they choose not to pay in, you're still getting some of your costs back from what you put into the system.
that
That's the
argument
other
went in.
alternative.
Yeah, those are the three alternatives: voluntary, betterment, or mandatory connection. When the betterment debate happened at town meeting, it was very, very soundly rejected. A requirement to connect, I don't think is likely to succeed. And so town, I think, has to also then recognize if you're not going to choose alternative A or alternative B, then when the water system comes looking for capital improvement, that you're going to have to pass that borrowing article. I mean,
Yeah, and it will have to be paid for by the general fund.
right.
Correct.
And I think the argument that got made, which was persuasive to many people in town, was you're getting fire protection, you're getting lower insurance rates, the town buildings are being covered by this system. So town government we were under a consent order in the first place to put the system in. Those services serve everybody. And so that's kind of what the arguments have looked like at town meeting. And we're in a box, we're in a pickle, we're in a tight spot. There aren't any easy answers.
So what I want to go back and revisit here is the suggestion that Doug, you had made earlier today, and that is that even if we go with a more attractive connection, or I guess you call it connection fee, which is let's say $750, that there are other charges that we should be prepared to assess. For example, the meter, the cost of the meter, the cost of inspections associated with that. So it could add, say, $500 to the bill, so to speak, that would have to be paid. But keeping the 750 strictly as an administrative charge that would be assessed to be part of the system.
Karen, can you let me share for a second so I can just throw up what we discussed at our last meeting?
you're all right. You should be able to share.
Okay.
I don't have it on.
It said host participant disabled or something like that.
No, it's the share screen's on.
Okay.
I'm
Try
getting,
it. Let's
I got the host
Try it again.
disabled.
try it again.
Okay.
I took it off and put it back on. There you go.
Can you see it now? So this is what we had up last time to discuss. And we had, basically, Jim, what you're suggesting is changing connection fee includes to something different.
It should be just connection fee is like administrative charge, administrative setup. And that then there are ancillary expenses would be the meter and transponder inspections that are required. And that would vary based on the property. You know, if it's a single family, if it's multifamily, then things like that.
Yeah, depending on the size of the meter and all the other costs.
And it seems like you have a meter price already posted in your rules and regulations.
That, you're right, Doug. Yeah,
So,
that right there it says administrative setup, take out meter and transponder.
This has not been published yet. This is just a draft that we're looking.
right,
No,
but
yeah, this is what we discussed at the last two meetings. This is the
Right, but
language
it's
that
not-
we agreed to, so.
It has not been basically shared in a public forum yet.
Well, other than our meetings, which are open to the public, but yeah.
But the intention here is to remove the meter prices from the rules and regulations and insert this.
Right, we talked about that at the last meeting, that the different size meters had different costs. So we said meter and transponder, we could just make that as market value or something like that.
Subject to quote. We had.
Yeah, that's what we had, subject to quote. So you put maybe you put a hyphen where that is, or then say meter and transponder fees subject to quote.
And inspections.
Okay, I can live with that.
So personally, I like taking out, meter and transponder and having that be a separate,
Yeah,
which is recovering costs, and it's already in your rules and regulations. Make sure that those prices actually align with today's dollars, whatever the cost is. I don't like, personally, again, I'm just speaking from someone that's looking at this fresh and new. I don't like the subject to quote. My experience is that developers, homeowners, business owners, they want to see a price. They want to see what the numbers are. And, the water commissioners have the ability to change those prices, at any time if there's significant changes. So, I prefer to just see a hard number in there for a connection fee down the line.
And you're right, it can be changed. But I think when we were putting this together is we didn't have those numbers for the larger meters. And then are there, if the meter cost, say, is instead of it being $250 or $300, that the meter charge would have to include administrative costs associated with that. And so you wouldn't just be passing the meter charge along at whatever the town pays for it. There would be an upcharge there as well.
Exactly.
Martin, the way the market's been going, these prices could change far faster than we could ever get anything.
Right.
Well, I think I would leave that with you meter, transponder. What was the third thing?
Meter, so
Administrative.
inspection. And
Yeah, inspection and administrative setup.
Well, the administrative setup is pretty much the same no matter what size the pipe is. So that's constant. That'll help Doug feel better and the customer feel better if that's a set fee. But
and I would like to see us retain as much of that 750 for reserves.
right, we just put the administrative setup, and then we say meter, transponder, and what the other product that we were going to add to inspection. Put those three on, subject to Well, I mean, there's no other reasonable way to do that.
Well, I hear what Rich is saying, that if we know the price of a meter, that we can, put that on the schedule.
Right, but the meter's gonna be a different price by Christmas. It'll be a different price by Thanksgiving.
I do think you have a caveat in your rules and regulations that says or current price if price is higher. I think you have that in your current regulations.
Yeah, I like that. Subject to current price. That sounds much more definite. Good idea.
So if somebody wants to come up with an inspection fee and administrative setup fee, what I'll do is I'll put all I think,
Look, can I tell you what our experience has been with that, Kurt? I was flabbergasted with what we were being charged by Whitewater for the cross connection inspections, because we were paying by the hour for somebody to come down here and actually go out to these businesses and look at it. So where we were thinking, oh, $75, for an inspection, it wasn't ending up being $75. It was, more like $150 to $200 per inspection. So we have to go back to Whitewater and say, okay, what are you going to charge us for each one of these? And
Jim,
yeah, go ahead.
Jim, I talked to Eric, and he said that we should charge $100 for that back, that control back charge.
that's a cross connection fee, but
Yeah,
then there's
that's
also,
what he said he should.
yeah.
But
and
they're charging us like $99 an hour to go out to the house, look at the trenches, and then they're charging another $100 for them to go out and do the inspection. So just FYI.
So,
I think an hour, does it include the driving back and forth and all that?
Well, it's, if they send somebody down here to do these inspections, that obviously there's a cost to get them down here.
Right.
So that needs to be incorporated in whatever Whitewater tells us is their charge for a cross connection inspection, or just like any kind of inspection that may be related to installation of a system.
We have a plumbing inspector.
yeah, I was just gonna say, Tom, I don't understand, why we wouldn't want to consider, like, for a cross connection, the plumbing inspector could do a cross connection inspection.
Not so sure. They have to be certified.
They have to be licensed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
Who
think
did them in Provincetown?
Either our water superintendent, or if we had a water meter person that was licensed, they would do it.
License?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most communities do it internally.
yeah, we don't know what, I think there's a water system operator at DPW, whether they've got the licensing to do this kind of inspection, I don't know. And we also don't know whether our plumbing inspector has that licensing as well.
Yes, that's what he.
I doubt the plumbing inspector has it. Your water system operator, you might, but probably highly unlikely. They probably just have the operator license and not the cross connection license.
This is plumber.
And there are private companies on Cape that do these kind of inspections that might be much more affordable than having Whitewater come down.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to format a document and have a document that we can review again. And we don't have a lot of time because we're trying to get a public hearing in, I think it's 2 weeks now. So, we have the fees to put in here for the meters, the actual costs, because Karen I think she got almost all of them except for a couple of them. We can put those prices in there. We can remove the connection fee, I'll put a connection fee where it says connection fee asterisk. I'm gonna put connection fee, and we're gonna have previous and current is $750. And then underneath the connection fee, I'm gonna have a whole bunch of new different charges. I'm gonna have all these meters. I'm gonna have an inspection fee. I'm gonna have an administrative setup fee. I'm gonna have a cross connection fee. Is there anything else that we need for fees?
I don't know, we should be talking with Whitewater if there are other services that we may have to require from them.
And I think I think you should leave the administration fee as in the $750 and then put the others in. We couldn't charge them $750. If we take all of what's in the connection fee out of there, they're going to say we're nuts. So put the $750 in and then put all the fees except for the setup in your list of add-ons.
Jim, anybody thinking anything different?
What I'm thinking is that I want to go back to Doug for a moment here. I think that if we're going into this public meeting in the not too distant future now, I would feel much more comfortable if we had that if you were the one who presented all of this information, and that I want you to be comfortable with whatever that we come up with. So what's it going to take for you to be more comfortable with with the design of this?
I think what I would be most comfortable with is I'll present the amounts for you, but I'm not going to say that these are the numbers that I recommended. I'm happy to present it. I'm not willing to stick my neck out for them.
How long do you think it would take to review the unit method? How much time would that take? So you could have concrete numbers that, or projections that you can hang your hat on.
Well, first let me say, I have no doubt the way Kurt has presented these, as new customers are added to the system, that it'll bring in significantly more revenue. That I have no doubt about. But the problem I have is I haven't looked at this and I have no idea how much revenue it's going to bring in. But I'm happy to, as I mentioned to Jim earlier and to Becky earlier, that I'm happy to put a PowerPoint presentation together that would keep it nice and simple and try to make it as clear and concise as we can.
Good. That sounds good.
But to answer your question, Rich, and I know I did not. From what I understand, there's nobody in the assessor's office. They're going to be out for a couple weeks. And that's where some of the information, or a good portion of the information that I'm going to need, is going to originate from.
Are you talking about like single family versus multi-family houses, things like that?
Correct. And I don't, you've only got a few hundred accounts, so, there's not going to be that many. But I still think it's important to know what we have.
Yeah, the one thing that we do have is the application forms that were filed in the water office for property owners, looking to connect to the system. And if they were being honest, and said, well, I have a cottage on my property as well, then they were paying the enhanced connection. They were charged the enhanced connection fee. But if they didn't let us know that they had, another unit on the property, then they were paid as a single-family dwelling.
My real concern is getting the utility billing system accurate so that when the bills go out in November, we don't miss a section of customer that should be charged one way and they're not being charged the proper way.
Right.
Well, that would be.
That's also 5 months down the road.
Yeah.
That
yeah,
should
exactly.
that should be in the records in the water office if they are a multi-unit user currently. But as I said before, if if the plumbing inspector did not communicate with us that there was two units there, two residential units at that site, we don't know that unless the property owner has told us.
And unless it's in, it was completed during the permit process, and then the assessor would have that. It would be in the assessor's property record.
Yes.
But I think we can all agree that going with that unit method there, even if we agreed to it and adopted it, there wouldn't be a loss to what you originally proposed, Doug.
Probably not. We're not talking about a lot of people,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why. If there were 30 or 40 customers that are going to fall into that unit method, I'd have a lot more heartburn.
Yeah, you might have heartburn, but when you do the numbers, I hear you, Doug, but when you do the numbers, like for somebody that, most of these situations are like somebody who's got like 1 or 2 or 3 cottages on a property. And what would happen in that case is, they might be using, 30, 40,000 gallons of water a year. So that's 15 or let's say it's all in the summer peak. The first 20 is at the low rate. The next 10 is at the intermediate rate. They wouldn't be paying very much money at all in water use fees. However, when they go to this unit method, instead of paying, $125, whatever it was, 160 right now a year, they're going to be paying 3 times 750. So the difference in customer service charges so overwhelms the difference in water usage fees. It's not even funny. I mean, it's like it's a very, very significant increase to people who are in that category, because that's what they probably have is summer cottages that they're separate dwelling units, but they've never been counted as separate dwelling units, and suddenly they're going to be paying 2, 3, 4 times the service charge because of that separate dwelling unit.
And the reality is that if they're generating income from those properties, that's something that they should be paying the additional fees for.
So I think that's the risk, is that we're going to uncover those cases, and it's going to bring in a significant amount of revenue to the system. And going forward, it's sending out a clear signal to people when we get the applications and so on and do the inspections. We're going to be looking for the additional dwelling units to make sure that they're properly set up in the water billing system.
Right.
So, I just don't see any risk to the town. I see nothing but upside.
Doug, is there any concerns for the equitable structure there? I mean, I know you're not a legal person, but is there any concerns from a legal standpoint that we're not doing things in an equitable manner?
As long as you treat all customers the same, then there's not an there's not an equity issue. So you can't, somebody who has a cottage on their property, you have to treat them exactly the same as somebody who has 4 cottages, or the trailer park that wants to hook in, or the 40B that wants to hook in. As long as you do that, there's no equity issue.
So I don't see that with this. I don't see an issue with what's being proposed here.
No, I mean, I think we could have argued that, and I did argue, but I was outvoted, that we should charge, because it's only one meter and it's one administrative fee and it's one bill, there's a cost difference for a customer that has multiple units on one meter. And you could charge them less. We're not. We're charging them exactly the same thing as if they were a single family homeowner.
I don't know anybody in the water industry who does that.
Yeah, we did it in electric utility rates all the time, but anyway.
Well, electric is different than water. You know that, Kurt.
No, I know,
You're regulated by the PUC and or by DEP or whoever it is. This has to follow Mass General Law.
Yeah, so did the other rates, but that's.
And,
But you're the regulators here.
going back to the point about that, if the base service fee and the water usage fee for the year evens out to a little over $300 per household or per residential unit, that's not excessive by any means. And I don't feel like we are gouging people for with a rate like that.
So Doug, if I could get you the number of multifamily parcels in town, let's just say within a couple of days, because although the principal assessor is not in, the assistant is, and she likely might be able to pull that information up. Could you just run some numbers for at least that we could just say, this is good, everything that we assumed is correct, everything is fine, and then maybe take a look at that connection fee and work with Kurt to put that little asterisk of what words under there. I think something should be under there that says connection fee includes capital assessment / administrative setup / something that would basically give it some flexibility to do what Jim said, which would put it into a reserve account for the future, which is that, this is meant to save for the system or pay back debt.
Legally, it has connection fees or system development fees have to be segregated separately and used for capital or debt reduction only.
Right.
So what does that mean? I mean, we can use it to balance the budget in terms.
Well, you can use it. Yes, you can use it to balance the budget year to year.
But we can use it to balance the budget by relying less on the general fund to subsidize it. The general fund's paying the debt. So ultimately, we're balancing the budget with this reserve fund. We're still paying the debt. It's just we're relying less on the general fund.
It counts against it adds to your revenues, and it goes to the surplus or deficit at the end of the year.
Okay.
But then let's say you bring in $5,000 in system development fees, $5,000 has to be put into the system development fee account and cannot be used to fund
Operations.
operations. When the money is to be used at the future, you would need to go to town meeting and say, we need to put a new generator on this pump station.
Right.
It's going to cost us $25,000. We're going to appropriate the money from the system development charge account, and it will not impact the rate.
Right.
Yeah, and my experience in Provincetown is as soon as you tell people it's not going to affect your tax dollar and the users are paying for it, and all hands are up.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And this will help keep the cost of water down long term. That's why it's so important to generate a fair number so that you can start accumulating some reserves to fund the capital that you have coming in the future. I know we've beaten this horse to death, but at $750, including the meter and everything else, And at the end of the day, you got $100 maybe left over that goes into your reserve, which is nothing.
That's probably a good point, Doug. And by pulling out all those extra charges, I think we could take care of that. So the 750 would only cover the administrative setup, and then would leave us plenty of time or money, and then put the quotes out for the other.
Yep.
And
And then I agree with Rich that we need to increase the 1-inch meter. The 1.25 inch, I would take that out. Nobody puts in 1.25 inch meters anymore. The 1.5 inch, a 2-inch meter, a 2-inch compound, a 3-inch, and a 4-inch. We need to come up with a system development cost for those as well.
But
And those are going to have
even
to be,
if we don't anticipate using them, or can't we just say larger ones will be subject to quote?
legally, I don't have an answer to that. But I suppose you could. But
boy, that 2 or 3-inch pipeline going in. I used to work for a water department. The only place we put those is like commercial laundromats and things like that. That's a hell of a lot of water. I mean,
you're probably not going to have any 3-inch meters, but you could have a 2-inch meter, 2-inch compound meter, probably down at that Harbor Village. You're probably going to have a 2-inch. You can have a 2-inch compound down there.
that could be.
Maybe I think bookstore is like 1.5 inches. That's like, and they're one of the largest users on the system right now.
But they won't be if Harbor Village ties in.
Yeah, if Harborside Village ties in, they're doing about 2 million gallons a year.
So they're probably going to want at least a 2-inch compound. So you're going to a 2-inch compound meter is probably going to run you, I don't know, $3,000-4,000, maybe more. Then you gotta put those in a meter pit. They have to be sunk to a certain point where they're not going to freeze in the winter.
And all that has to be designed. I mean, you have to have, engineered drawings for all of that.
Absolutely.
And
yeah,
that's going to be at the property owner's expense.
Right. It's all spelled out all that stuff's spelled out in the regulations as well.
Yeah. Right.
All right.
I just don't want to see you. I don't want to see you guys get screwed when it comes to, and pardon the harsh language, but if you have to put in a larger meter and then you're tied to a $750 charge, you're going to lose money.
Oh.
Right.
Well, we already know that. We did get numbers from Karen for some of the other meter sizes, and we need to make sure that, to Rich's point, I think it's better to have numbers in there for better certainty for people connecting rather than a surprise like from a subject to quote. But
you can't quote a rate that you're going to lose money on.
Right.
We're all saying the same thing.
Yeah,
we're all saying the same thing.
It's us too, but if we can't adjust it, we say it's $9,000 for the meter and the pit and all, but they have to build their own pit. And then it turns out it's going to be $10,000. And I don't think we need any more surprises than we want to give our customers.
So we're under a time crunch here with this in terms of this public meeting. So I think we got to kind of assign some duties here. I'm happy to take care of reaching out to Whitewater to get all any fees, their list of fees that we might need to put into this document. Anything else, Kurt?
Well, I think we need some additional, meter quotes.
Right, and if we tell Karen
I
what
can
those,
get those. I can get those.
okay,
You want a 2-inch compound meter?
Yes.
I think we have the 1.5, Karen, anyway, from the
Yeah,
original
I
one.
do.
We didn't
Yeah, I
have
have
a
it.
1.25 anyway, I don't think, so we'll take that out completely.
Okay.
I think we have one, so we have the 1, we have the 1.5, and then,
Yeah, you want a
then I guess-
1.25 and a 2?
well, 1.25, Doug said people don't put those in,
Yeah,
so
that-
probably,
They only exist in very old systems. They're an outdated meter.
so like
Okay.
1.5 and 2-inch, and what's the difference between 2-inch and 2-inch compound?
A 2-inch is probably going to be a compound regardless.
what's the difference, Doug?
Okay, a compound meter has 2 ways of measuring flow. It measures the high flow and it measures the low flow. So it's a much more accurate meter. If you have a straight 2-inch meter, when a low amount of water is flowing through that meter, it may not spin the dial or the nutating disc with enough force for it to register properly. So you're going to under register how much water is being used. When you have a compound meter, when it's a low flow, it diverts into a different section of the meter and it has a smaller mechanism that is much more accurate. So it picks up the low flow. And then when the high flow comes through, it picks up the high flow. You get 2 separate readings, they're added together, and that's your consumption for the period.
So it sounds like we'd be looking at the compound meter.
Oh, definitely. You definitely have to. That's right on that, because you can register no flow if it's to a certain loudness, if you didn't have the smaller meter size.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're gonna be really high in the summertime and they're gonna be low in the wintertime.
But that's why you need the low flow.
Exactly, yeah.
And, if in the middle of the night, if a single toilet flushes, calling for a gallon of water may not register on a strictly high flow meter, where it will register on a compound meter.
Yeah,
That's definitely gonna be an issue there, yeah, for
Yep.
sure.
And of course, compound meters are more expensive.
of course, you got 2 meters basically.
Yes.
So I just want to check on this. So Karen, if we were going to go ahead with the public hearing on this at the date that we had discussed, when does this have to get published?
Well, it's getting published on Fridays, the 2
Oh, I thought
consecutive Fridays.
I thought you were gonna
So
put it
it's
in.
the 1st in the 8th. Well, I had to put it in last week so it would make the deadline of Monday, which
Yeah,
puts it in the paper on Friday this week and Friday on the 8th. And then the meeting is the 26th, but we can also advertise for a public hearing.
And do we have to have all the data up to snuff, or just what the meeting's about in general? In the announcement?
It's just what the meeting's about. It's just in general. It doesn't, you're gonna go rate structure, fees. It's a general statement. So you could push that public hearing by re-advertising into July or early August.
But if we only have to say that we're going to discuss rates, we don't have to publish in the newspaper the new rates and the old rates or whatever, right?
but Karen, didn't you already, isn't this already out for publication?
It'll go out on Friday, I believe. The deadline was Monday.
Right, that's what I thought was the case, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be in the paper Friday.
But-
Right, but we can cancel it. That's not a big deal.
Well, no, I think the opposite. I mean, I don't think people are hearing this loud
Yeah.
enough. We're gonna lose HVCC if we don't have a proposal for them. They're
Where are
gonna
they
change
going?
they're gonna change their board of directors and they're very likely not gonna connect to town water.
Yeah.
There's somebody else that would like to be on that board who does not want to connect to town water, and it's, they have a vested interest, and if they win, at the board meeting, they're not going to connect. So, and we've got to tell Daniel something. There's a condo association that's being formed and a group of people that are trying to figure out, how
They're
they can
not a
connect
condo
in.
association. Kurt, they're not a condo association. They're just individual owners now. That's how they're gonna do it. That's 6 separate connections. I've talked to the wife multiple times.
Yeah. I don't know how,
Then they're not an issue, so that would be okay, because those rates are pretty settled.
but I got an answer to my initial call. How much detail is in the one that's out there now, the announcements that's coming?
It's general. It's
Okay.
not in detail. It just says fees, rates, and I think it just says fees and rates.
So we don't have to actually have the actual numbers till we show up at the meeting.
Right.
So we're good. We're good.
We're not good, but we're
safe.
When is the meeting
The 26th.
of July?
Yeah,
At what time?
4 o'clock.
Is it going to be Zoom or real?
As of today, it's a hybrid.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, that's not okay. Well, we'll be in the room with them, right? And then you can all read it on. No, that's fine.
It's at the Adult Community Center, right, Karen?
Yes.
Good work, Karen. Well, gentlemen, I think I have to be in another order. Either can you do without me, or do we have to decide something right now that has to be voted on?
No,
No, we're
No, I
kicking the
think
can down the road again.
well, no. Why are you saying that, Kurt?
Oh, I'm just, I'm being facetious.
Think of it as hurling in the old days. You're just moving the ball towards the destination.
That's another way of looking at it.
I can, if you guys are okay with it, I'd prefer Doug to take one last look at this, the structure that we talked with. I can work to get Doug that information, particularly on multi-units. If we can give him the go-ahead to start putting a presentation, have him a chance to look at these reviews, make a final recommendation, and then the board can go into that meeting, the public hearing, with the recommendation, or you schedule one more meeting just prior to that public hearing to discuss what rates you're going to bring forward to the public hearing.
Sounds good to me.
I think we need to do that. We need to have one more meeting before that.
Yeah, so we're all on the same page.
Right. And that we've got all the I's dotted and T's crossed. And
The other still outstanding question you had asked, I don't know if Rebecca's still on, but there was that issue of people that had previously paid the connection fee, and what, if any, legal concerns, liability, et cetera, there was relative to their prepayments that are now with the new rate schedule going to be dramatically different.
I had a conversation with our attorney yesterday. I still have to send an email in writing, but the Board of Water Commissioners, they cannot forgive debt.
Well,
So she did tell me that. Is that what you're talking about? What people have already paid in?
just the connection fee. That's a one-time fee. They paid it.
You talking about the $6,000?
Yeah,
Are you talking about the loan, the liens on the houses, or?
yeah.
Yes, that's the $6,000.
Yeah, you can't forgive the debt.
No,
Well, we're not forgiving debt.
how many are
well, Kurt, in some cases, we may be if you got people who still owe part of that 6,000 and that they signed a lien agreement, then what we're hearing is we can't forgive that debt. They would still have to pay that off.
John, I need to email John Giorgio. I've had a lot of meetings this week. It's on my list, but I did start the conversation with Carolyn yesterday.
Yeah, I think we should have some people, additional,
Yeah, I'm gonna get a legal opinion on it in writing.
yeah, I'm not so much saying legal opinion. I mean, obviously need a legal opinion, but the opinion needs to be based on what the facts on the ground actually are, because it's not, I can't even imagine the attorneys saying that we should continue to collect. Let's say somebody's paid $2,000 into a $6,000 connection fee. That the attorneys would say we should continue to collect that fee when we're now charging new customers $750.
I have the agreement from Karen, and I have the new proposed connection. I have all the data. I have to give it to them and put it in an email.
But
I
you
have all the data that I need.
Right. But you know what I'm saying. I
I know
can't
exactly what you're
imagine.
saying.
I can't imagine an attorney would suggest that we should do that.
Well, let's just wait and see what they say. I'll get the opinion in writing and then I'll forward it to all of you.
Because we could use all the cover we could get.
Yeah, I mean, we got to make sure that we, definitely consult them before we
Oh,
make
yeah.
any moves on that.
Yeah, no. I just, sometimes we, anyway, I just want to make sure the language is clear in terms of what we're asking and what the situation is. And this isn't necessarily debt. This is connection fees. It's rates.
No,
and
it's
connection.
debt. They took out a loan.
Well, they took out a loan for a connection fee, but.
All right, let's move on. I will do the send the email to the lawyer and then we'll just get an answer.
So can we set a next meeting then?
Yes.
Obviously, I don't think we should try to do it next Tuesday, the 5th. But if we've got, and we said that the public hearing is on the 26th, right?
Yes, it's the 26th.
Okay.
So
So-
you have,
We have the 12th or the 19th. Preferences?
To catch up with Kirk kicking the can down the road, do you want to do it the 12th?
That's fine with me.
And if we screw up, we still have the 19th in reserve.
Right. Okay. So we will assume that we're going to, talk again on the 12th.
Rebecca, do you think that's
Jim,
enough
can we
time?
do the minutes
Um,
before we leave? Can we get the minutes approved, please? Because it's like 3 sessions and I need to get them posted.
yeah, I have not looked at
Thank
them.
You guys, I'm gonna bow out. I got the select board meeting coming out.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
It's been a pleasure. I'll see you
Thanks,
on the
Rich.
12th.
Thanks, Rich.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
I'm seeing you in action. Thanks a lot.
Rebecca, do you think that's going to be enough time for the attorneys to the 12th to get an opinion?
Yeah, I'll put a time on it. I'll make sure that they answer me before then. And like I said, I already set the stage yesterday because we were on a call with something unrelated. So I kind of, prefaced it. So I'll tell her. What is that? 2 weeks? Yeah, we should be
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Okay. Karen, can we push it out to 2 weeks when we do these?
2 weeks, what you want, what are you talking
Minute.
about? I missed that. What?
Minutes, the minutes.
Oh, we'll be at 3,
Karen,
4 sets. Yeah, I guess.
Karen,
Whatever.
really quick, just check the room when you go into work tomorrow. Make sure the room's available and send out just like a confirmation.
The 26th? I already did it.
No, for the 1 in 2 weeks because it's after July 1st.
Oh, all right.
But are we,
Okay.
Yeah, what's
that's
happening?
still going to be a Zoom meeting in 2 weeks.
No, it's gotta be hybrid.
How you go? Can we talk tomorrow about that?
Yes, because it's a nightmare. Let's not even do it right now.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I'm looking for a motion.
I just want, I'm dealing with it with the ZBA hearings for the 40B permits and I'm like, it's just awful.
All
So
right.
we'll
There's
talk
only
about
one-
it tomorrow.
Yeah, there's only one room, is that correct?
There's only one room, there's only one way to record, and the select board put a policy in back in September that all meetings have to be recorded. So how do you do that with all of these boards and committees with one setup? I don't think they thought that through, but whatever.
Of course not.
Why would they do that now? It's
All
just-
right, we're dropping it and we're getting off
All
this.
right. Do I hear a motion to
Sure.
adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. And it's roll call vote. Tom,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you. All right. So we will reconvene on the 12th. And Doug, I hope that you'll be able to join us for that.
Yeah, I put it on my schedule.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Doug, when I get the numbers from Karen, I'll just, for ease, I'll revise the sheet that I've got and shoot it back out to you
Yeah,
with
that's
all the changes we've discussed this evening.
okay.
Good. Gail, thank you for being with us.
My
She had her
pleasure.
hand up, she had her hand up for a long time, then she finally got so tired, she took it down.
No,
It was such a fast-moving conversation, I couldn't really jump in.
no, we finally,
Do you know, want to know what I was going to say?
Go
No,
ahead.
Well, my comment had to do with the betterment. At 2 points in your conversation, you suggested that you could implement a rule that people along a water line had to hook up. But I recall Harry Turkanian at a water board meeting several years ago saying that probably could not be retroactively applied.
yeah, I think you're right.
So you need to check that out.
Doug, for your just for your information, Gail Ferguson is our historian. She's been in town for a number of years and she followed all these developments with the water system over the years. So we're
Okay.
very fortunate to have her listening in.
Are
And
you
is-
calling me an old lady?
No, I didn't say that.
He called you a historian. I think that's just
Historian.
that's a professional description.
Yeah.
I'm the mascot.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Have a good week, everybody.
You too.
Take care.